Comic exposure begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Comic Exposure Podcast. My name is Josh, and with me is my ancient amoeba, my single-celled organism from the farthest reaches of outer space. The one, the only.
From a distant planet, in a distant solar system, in a distant galaxy. Travis Ratz here.
Travis and I are bringing you the Comic Exposure Podcast, where we dive into graphic novels and trades, and you, my friends, have joined us for an episode of our summer event, Graphic Novel Summer. Travis, we are on book 2 of Graphic Novel Summer. Last time together, we read In, which was self-exploration, kind of a coming to terms with relationships and finding a way to be open and honest and connect with people. And on today's episode, we're throwing all of that away because we are reading Organisms.
I make an argument. There's
Okay.
this book is some way about connections.
Okay, I want to get into that. Here we go. This is Organisms from an Ancient Cosmos, written and illustrated by S. Craig Zahler. It is out on Dark Horse Comics. It's a pretty mega tome. Look at the size of this thing, Travis.
I know. They were talking. I was listening to an interview, and he was talking
compared
about
to my head.
Yeah, that it comes in that makes the whole thing a little more fun to read. There with that, hold that up again.
It was
fun.
Now
we're on cameras.
Yeah, no, it's a big
Nice.
guy.
Beautiful book.
Good, big, oversized, cartoony pages on it. Let's talk about this book. Let's just kick it off, Travis. If I can, if I can put a premise forward for this book, it is like a 50s B movie with like 90s or 80s sprinkled on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the mindset. After reading like the first 5 pages, I had to go, okay, I'm watching a 50s, 60s B movie with kind of the tastes of the late 80s, early 90s kind of language and sort of overtones of it. But I had to like put myself in that mindset of this is a sci-fi network film as a book. What do you feel about as I postulate that?
I got my pen out today. I'm making notes. Look at me making notes. That's my nose. So I do want to get back to this idea of B movie. Okay. What makes you scream B movie? But before we do that, I'm gonna give just a quick general summary, just so everyone's up to date on kind of what story we're talking about here. So Organisms from an Ancient Cosmos. I'm gonna give you the broad strokes. That's really what we got here. Is we have an alien spacecraft arrives on Earth suddenly. The whole world scrambles to figure out what this spaceship is doing. It causes some disruption and chaos in its arrival, and so the armed forces and military of the world, they blow it up. They blow up this spaceship, and a character, one of our main characters, Carlton Land, who's like this billionaire, trillionaire, playboy, and some of his some other characters like science officer Yamazaki from the U.S. Navy and a couple others make it their mission to recover the life forms and technology of this crashed spaceship and use it to create their own methods of traveling through space, which they end up doing, encountering the alien life force in its outer space habitat. And there is a climactic engagement with an alien species. And that's kind of the broad strokes of it. So, and really there's not like that's it. There's no like kind of, oh, but then this happens, which you're not expecting. So I want to ask you, you say B movie. We've used B movie on this podcast before. I think in particular, last year we read a couple of like sci-fi books that we said were like we used as sci-fi B movies. So as I was reading this, and I think I was like, oh, I think Josh is gonna say B movie, and then you texted me. And you're like, looks like it's going to be a B movie talk. So, I want to give you this moment. So, what are the elements of B movie that you're seeing in here?
I think it's just the sort of I don't know how to put this with I just want to preface this with I enjoyed my time with this book, and so my critique might seem like I didn't, but
no.
If you enjoy that type of media, then this is your bag, right? The dialogue is kind of stilted and like overly direct. Yeah, overly direct, very straightforward, very melodramatic, right? And it feels written. Does that make sense? It doesn't feel like normal dialogue. It feels written. The set piecing of it all feel very B movie. Just the premise of like, we're going to create this spaceship using other alien technology to make our way into outer space. The alien things that they meet with early on look like little machines, but they're actually aliens. So even what I would consider set dressing, everything looks like it's B movie quality design work. And again, I don't mean that to be pejorative.
We love B movies,
but that's what it reads like to me. So I've been there's a couple of YouTube channels that have old B movies on them, right? A buddy of mine was like, hey, sometimes I just put this on,
like the thing from outer space.
Yes, and, all of these old school B movies. And so I will turn them on as like background stuff while I'm like, it's in the morning. I want something on while I'm making breakfast or I'm doing whatever, or I get home from work and I'm like, I'm just gonna turn something on. There's nothing on TV. I don't want to hunt for whatever. And so I'm like, all right, vampires in London from 1972, turn it on, right? That's what this read like. All the characters are very archetypal. The dialogue is very stiff and feels written. And it just has this goofy premise of this billionaire who ends up in jail. And so there's this large series of thing where you're like, all right, there's this guy in jail. And just the sort of the story beat of I'm going to pay off people because I'm a billionaire. I'm going to pay off people in jail by buying them cars so they protect me from the Nazi guys. And then, X, Y, and Z, because he's sad because the beginning of the story, our main character, Carlton, is sad at the beginning. He gets in, he's in this drunk driving.
His fiance is blown up by this alien invasion during
their wedding, right? And that felt very B movie, right? Just the premise itself, or I guess like B movie through trauma at times, like that sort of Traumaville, but not as gory and gruesome, but just that goofiness, like poking at B movies.
I agree with you that this is a B movie, but in the sense the reason I asked you that is because I think I wanted to kind of get at the heart of what we mean when we say a B movie. And I think that also the art style of this too, which is really, really cool, but it does feel like almost like you're viewing a storyboard to what would then become a larger film or something like that.
Yeah.
But and I really wish I'd read this book in the fall for my master's course in film. I'm taking so I'm sure we're going to go back like all the way to like 1930s and watch some like really like old sci-fi and some sci-fi B movies and some major stuff on here. But I think at its core, what we have, what's our, he's the screenwriter on here, Craig Zahler. Zahler. He's written some great movies. I love Bone Tomahawk. I love Drag Through Concrete. And they feel like they have a B movie attitude, but his technical skill as a director somehow I think elevates it. And so I was trying to think of the premise of this. So I want to talk to you around to this about the cool thing about any kind of space adventure movie is how are they going to travel through space? What is the device or what's the science they're going to use behind it?
Yeah.
And in this book, the alien life forms that end up crashing on Earth, they pull them out and they're like almost like organelles of a cell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're drawn that way, they're described that way, and they function that way. Like they're just kind of amoeba-like creatures on there.
Yeah.
And they find out that they get through these vast spaces of time and light through staying still while everything else moves past them at the speed of light or to a certain degree on here. Now, here is where I want to circle back to, Josh.
Okay.
When you think of something like Interstellar or like the movie Contact, right? I think that this science principle moving through time feels like it stands up and feels right at home with those two other type of sci-fi space travel stories, right?
Yes.
So what is the difference between those and this? Is it just the craftsmanship?
I think it's the package that it's wrapped in, right? I don't like. I think and I would tell you what, Interstellar might seem as kind of B movie-ish if it were in this same sort of art style, the same sort of panache, and it just, I think, one, we don't get to the space travel until very late in this book, right? Like it's it's like part 3, 120 pages, 124 pages before they travel into outer space, right?
Yeah.
It is, I think that's part of it. Like a lot of this story is about kind of Carlton waiting out his prison sentence and everybody that he's kind of brought into this to build this for him, building this system up, right? And so most of the book is like that trial and tribulation of all of that, and just a lot of conversation and a lot of like silly's not the right word, but like overly melodramatic moments, but in this sort of goofy package, right? Like they go underwater to go see the book starts off with this plane smashing into this
awesome beginning,
right? Like it is this sort of
this giant spaceship. We're going to describe this giant spaceship manifest immediately because that's the way this time travel thing works, and it manifests itself around an air motion in the air. So now that airplane is trapped within this giant spaceship, and within moments has just crashed into this thing and been destroyed. And it's you read that opening and you're like, oh, buckle up, baby. And then we have then the story really kind of sets in, and they like things stretch out, and it's long beats before you get to any kind of really dramatic action or sci-fi based moments. And sometimes when you do get to one, it's just, oh, this is really quick. Oh, and then it goes off. Oh, and by the way, we nuked that, and that, it moves really quickly.
I think like there's all of these pieces where, it starts with that opening, the plane crashes. In the scenes beforehand, you can see like there's a baby in a woman's lap on the plane. The pilot starts off complaining of like, did someone smother that baby? It must have run out of calories because it must have been crying over and over again, right? And then the final scene, the plane crashes, and then it's the baby on fire. Like, there's just like moments of that throughout where he's getting married, and he's about to take his bride's hand, and the explosion blows her up, and it's left like he's holding her severed hand from the fireball.
It's very Mars Attacks.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like this B movie kind of quality to it. And then you have the pilot whose like legs are burnt off in the mission, and later he has robot legs attached. There's all these very sort of like B movie goofy things. And I think you're right. It is that sort of Mars Attack sensibility. I think that's why I'm like, it's B movie through the lens of the 90s is what we're getting, right?
Yeah, Craig Zahler or Zahler is, I think, I listened to him talk about this in an interview, and this, like, he started developing, like, doing the artwork to it, because he wrote the story and the artwork. And he said this is the longest he'd spent on artwork. Like, that's kind of where he got his creative juices flowing as a kid, was like artwork. So he sat down to do this. It was a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think he approached it as like a Mars Attacks thing. I think he approached it as like, here's a cool concept for a way that aliens could arrive, almost like in a Neil deGrasse Tyson sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like where so much of the book, I feel like, is us exploring the premise of a possible way that we could get to distant galaxies and make contact with other life forms, and why they would come and make contact with us, right?
Yeah.
But then as that unfolds, it just becomes this big sci-fi space adventure on there. So yeah, I think I agree with you that this is B movie status, even though it reminds me so much of Mars Attacks. Is that me putting Mars Attacks onto this? Which is fine, because I mean, structuralism, as as the reader, we get to define the meaning of it. But I want to go back to my favorite part of this book, is what you were mentioning, is with Carlton in prison, because that is really, it's not just surface level space. There are some really human characters and human conflicts with this. One of the science officers, Dr. Yamazaki, his wife is dying of cancer as this ship is being built, and he has to make the decision, to like go or be with her on her deathbed. In his drunken stupor and drug-induced stupor after his wife was eviscerated, ends up killing a family with children in a DUI. We have,
there's like these big melodramatic moments, which are just, they're just interesting pieces in here. Like, again, that idea of he wakes up in the hospital and then the nurses hate him because like he killed this family, right?
Yeah.
And it's this whole scene where he's like, can I get a glass of water? Like, I'm dehydrated here. And like the nurse is like, yeah, just in case you're wondering, that family's not okay. And he's like, what are you talking about? Right. And then
who's not thirsty? Those kids you killed.
The nurse spits in his water. He's in prison and he's navigating relationships with different people in prison. He becomes friends with another inmate. You've got like,
but then he ultimately goes and does this huge thing for mankind, right?
Yes.
So let me ask you that as opposed to that question. Is that ultimately the amount of money he spends, the amount of time he commits to this thing, does that absolve him of and the killing of those people?
I think what's interesting is that this story doesn't let him get out of jail, right? Mm-hmm. This story doesn't go, he's a billionaire. The story says, yeah, he's a billionaire, but he says, I did something wrong and I'm going to do my time. Right.
Yeah.
So he stays in prison. He stays there. He does his time. He like uses his money to do all of this. And it makes you go like, oh, a good billionaire. But like, it's this weird kind of situation where, his friend is like, I don't want to help you. You're a terrible person. And I don't want to be your friend. And so he's in jail, and then he finally gets out, and his buddy's like, you did your time, right? Like you've done it. You didn't use your whatever to get out of here. I have to forgive you. And then the doctor who he goes to hire to go work on this, the doctor who he met.
The doctor who was so mean to him at the hospital because could not deal with him.
And they end up kind of falling in love, right? Like, because it's this interesting, like I said, there's just big melodramatic moments in it that feel very like well, it can't just be all sci-fi, right? We got to put some of this in there. And it's overwrought, right? But but I had to sit in this going like, that's what this is. This is a melodramatic, soapy sci-fi story. Like I had to go into it like that. You know?
And I think you wanted, I think there's a sense of wanting a big scope to the story spanning decades, right? Through multiple characters. But at the same time, it's one person drawing all this stuff. So like, well, I got to like find a way to condense all this. So you might not be able, because I know he can write dialogue that isn't as melodramatic and maybe quick exchanges as this. But when it comes to that pacing, you're like, hey, some of the nuance of maybe more human sounding, real world sounding dialogue in order to kind of tell this big space opera epic.
Yeah. And I think what we get is the middle of the book is very, very talky, right? Because he's in prison. The team is building it. They're exploring the old sunken, alien spaceship. And then at the end, it kind of very much goes into the sort of action set piece where they're in outer space. There's they find out that by traveling to this new area, the organelles, these aliens, are taking them to the war zone, the battle zone, where they're fighting for survival. And Carlton's like, nah, we got to fight this thing. If we don't fight this thing, they're going to keep popping up. They're going to try to escape it, and they're going to end up crushing and hurting people, like he hurt someone with his vehicle.
Yes,
right? This alien ship didn't mean to, but it destroyed lives. He didn't mean to.
Right. They were both suffering.
Yes, but they were both escaping from death and tragedy, and he wants to do right. And so he's like, no, we got to go save these people, but they don't know how they're going to get home after it. And it's this weird, he continually does these scenes that are like overly violent, but so cartoony, right?
Right. Even sexual scenes too.
Yes. Yeah. Like it's an interesting sort of like, he didn't, and this isn't super, it's very indie art, right? It again feels, it's like very Crumbish. I don't know how, it's that sort of indie comic. It's not, I don't know, like it's like very flat. It's blacks and gray wash and very cartoony.
Thick lines, big old thick lines.
Big thick lines. Not a lot of detail. But in scenes, he does sex scenes, he does violent scenes. I mean, there's a flaming baby. There's a scene where a dude gets his head chopped off by a claw that busts through the spaceship. There's a guy with his guts hanging out, right?
There's a dildo in an aquarium.
I'm glad you saw that too. But it's this very like interesting way of like, yes, I know that my art doesn't make this look real, but I'm still going to put real things in it, right?
Not letting the art dictate the type of story that can be told with it, which I really like. We saw that a little bit. I mean, we saw that explored a little bit in the Beneath the Trees Where No One Sees, right? The book where we're using that really kind of golden book, early kind of kids art lines and
Richard's
watercolors.
Scary, right? Looks like Richard's Scary. Yeah.
So and not letting that dictate, it must be for this kind of story. I really like that. I really like when the art itself doesn't contain the story to one thing on there. So let's kind of talk, maybe kind of shift our conversation into, since this is indie graphic novel summer, our experience of reading this. Obviously, we read indie graphic novels before, but we're stringing them together here. And, compared to in this one, I'll go first. That's your question. No, I'll go first. The experience of reading this is a longer book. It moved pretty quickly, but I got to tell you, this is the experience I have with some of these type of longer self-contained graphic novels is I go through moments of being really into it and then being like, how many pages are left? And it's this kind of roller coaster of it.
Yeah.
Again, like this book, enjoyed the reading process to it, but it wasn't a page turner at every moment. And at some point, and because it is an indie graphic novel, you don't know if it's going to pay off, right? You don't know if, like, well, it's a Batman book. I mean, if it's not good, at least it's good. There's a Batman story in there, right? Or like, oh, this is like one of the top selling comics in comic book stores right now. There's going to be something to it. Here, once you get like, you know, a page 100 in this thing, and you're kind of like, I'm not sure what this is yet.
Yeah.
What am I here? You kind of have to trust it. And I feel like that is an experience that I have with some of these independent graphic novels that are plus 200 pages. Don't know anything about them going in, and there's not a lot of chatter about them in the comic world that I'm in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think part of this process is the idea of like pacing is so much different in books like this than in what we normally read, which is tied to like the 22-page issue format, right? Like when you read a trade, you're like, okay, I'm going to read 2 issues. I'm going to read 40 pages. There'll be an arc within that 40 pages. There'll be an arc within that 40 pages. There are, is it 3 chapters in this or 4 parts in this? I can't remember.
Oh, good question. I know there's at least 3 because I remember seeing the 3rd act. I think there might be 3. Let's just say 3.
I think it's 3. But I don't know that those 3 parts, I mean, maybe they're kind of paced similarly, the amount of pages they are, but they don't have a beginning, middle, and end necessarily in each of those 3 parts. It is, I think reading, and you know, the name graphic novel, I think sometimes reading these is a lot more like reading a novel, right? I think reading these feels more novel-like than episodic, which is what we get from this. Feels less like a TV show, right? And maybe more like a movie. Maybe that's, I mean, if we're gonna do it that way,
yeah.
But I think these feel more like novels than the trades that we read feel like episodic novellas, right?
Right.
This
feels. I'm sorry.
You know, I just think the structure lends it to be like, yeah, there's a slow spot, right? Like that's what it feels like. Oh, this is the slow part of the book, and then it's gonna burn. And that doesn't always happen in those 22-page churn that you get.
Yeah. You of course you hit it right on the head, and I don't know why I didn't think about that, but yeah, we've conditioned ourselves to read trades where we can binge something, but we're still binging self-contained issues, which have that start with a punch and then give it that thing and with a cliffhanger. Not all single issues that are in trades that way, but it's that serial television format. Like each issue is an episode, so you have that reader experience arc. Yeah. Oh no, I gotta buy the next issue.
Yes,
issue.
And I think what happens in trades is it's that roller coaster ride, but it keeps going up until you get to the end of that big arc, and then it comes down, right? I think
they got to sell you the next issue, or else they can't tell their full story, right?
And so I think what you get with a graphic novel like this, and I think it's the same. You know, we read, we've read when it comes to sort of like that, the larger stories. When I think about Brubaker and Phillips and the crime books we read, those aren't issue episodic, but they still feel very tight, right? I think we mentioned this when we read In. There's a freedom to how you tell a story when you're like, oh, it's the graphic novel. This is it. There's no more than this. This is a story. I'm going to tell it how I want to tell the story. I don't have to pace it in a way that fits for a trade. I'm just going to do it. And so if there's a lull in it, there's a lull in it. I don't care. It's 200 pages. It's my novel.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Have you read Little Women? There's a lot of slow parts in that novel.
Yes. So I think that's the big difference between it. And I think as we go through this summer, you and I are going to experience the process of what these stories look like. In felt very fast paced because it was very vignette-y, right?
Yeah.
And he's a New Yorker cartoonist. So he works in vignettes and single panels and telling ideas that way, right?
Yeah.
And so in feels very like, ooh, here's this moment, and that drives you along in a different way. This feels like a movie. It does, and maybe that's also the B movie part of it for me.
It's also he's a script writer. He is a screenwriter, right? Yeah,
right. It feels like an older movie where you're like, okay, this is the slow part, right? Modern movies don't play that way normally because our attention span is what it is, and you got to go. Poof, we got to get in. We got to get. We have to action set piece, move it to the next thing.
Well, we've talked about this before. How one of the things with comics is that we're just like, I wish people would read comics because people get to tell these stories that are so fantastical and out there and epic that would for a studio to greenlight a film like this would be millions and millions of dollars investment. So you don't get to tell all these stories, but with just some paper, inks, and this guy's a screenwriter. Who knows? This might have been a script and been like, oh man, no one's gonna like. I don't make this kind. People don't give me this kind of budget for movies,
right?
So how can I tell this story?
Right, and if I did it on a low budget, it wouldn't look the way I want. It wouldn't play the way I want it to play, right?
So, I couldn't tell the whole story. Yeah, that I wanted to tell.
Or I'd have to do it, and it would look like a silly B movie given the budget that I can get to do it. So I might as well tell my story with my own art and my own stuff. I'm curious how I would feel about this if it were a different artist. And I don't think it would have done as well for me. There's something,
I agree.
I think there's something about pairing the sort of melodrama, the way the dialogue works, and sort of the idea of this with this very low-key art, right? Like I think it all fits together, and I think it works because it's a singular guy telling a singular story, as opposed to like, here's my story, you draw the way you want to draw.
But he's also a visual storyteller, right? He's a director.
Yeah.
He sees stories and pictures. And I like that idea of this guy, this writer who writes the story, he needs to exercise. And writing it in words is not enough for someone who thinks visually. And he's not going to get the budget to film it. So, hey, I can draw. Let me do this. And there is something, we're going to use that term, very punk rock about that, Josh. And I hope let's so you know, this guy does have a metal band.
I'm you know what? It feels like it. It is. It's a very. I think you were right. There were times where I was like, okay, I like where this is going, and I read it. I read at night. That's normally when I read is at night. I think I finished it during the. I think I
mostly read at night. Mostly.
I finished this one during the day though. I read it on. I want to say. I think I finished it last Monday because we got back from San Diego early. I was like, I'm going to read it. I'm going to finish it. So I finished it downstairs. I was awake. It wasn't before bed. But this was one of those things I was like, okay, where do I stop reading? Because it isn't structured the way other things are structured. I read in one sitting.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's structured in a like it keeps hitting the next little vignette piece. This one took a little longer to read, but I think I enjoyed it that way. It felt, I don't know. I think this is an interesting.
It felt like an experience reading it, right? It felt like you were engaging with something for a longer period of time. You kind of had to take breaks because there were lulls, and even though there weren't like pages that tell you, okay, this is the end of this issue, you're just like, okay, you know what? That's about it for tonight. Put you down over here. I'm gonna get back to you later, buddy. And then you get back to it and you're like, okay, I remember this. Okay, I'm picking it up. It took me probably around like 8 or 9 days of reading this, which is way more time than I would usually do with the trades that I read. Usually it's like, and I'm done with whatever we're reading. So it was nice to live with this for a little bit longer, Yeah.
I think that's the piece of it that I think as we go through this and we read these 6 books over graphic novel summer, every one I think is going to feel different, which is interesting because we really, if I look back at our last year, right, of reading stuff, it's been a lot of trades. We read a whole grip of superhero books, which are very much designed to do that roller coaster we were talking about. So this is, I think, a really good palate cleanser of a summer to go, let's have some different experiences with reading comics. And I think these 2 books that we've started with and this one have felt very different from one another, right? I'll be interested as we move into our next book. Does that give us a third peak, a third difference of what we're doing? Or is it kind of at the end of this, are we going to go, oh, your graphic novels are this or they're this?
Yeah.
Right? Are we going to come to that conclusion as we end this? But so I think just to kind of put a bow or a pin on this book, as you step away from, as you step,
you're good.
Okay. Am I not good?
No, I was making a nuke pun. I said let's put a nuke in it.
I didn't hear you say nuke. Yeah. So as I thought you said something and I paused or whatever. But anyway, so as we put a nuke in this, in this book, and we end it, and we end our conversation on this, walking away from reading this book, how does it change what you're looking for in a comic? Did it give you something we haven't had in a while that you're like, oh, I kind of enjoy that different taste?
Yes. And I don't know if it's this. I mean, I think other, no, I'm not saying this is the graphic novel, but I like comic books that are slightly uncomfortable for me to read, not in subject matter, but in experience, where I'm like, oh, this is taking me 8 days. I wonder why. It's not bad. I'm like enjoying it. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, whoa, what's going on here? I don't want to say novelty because that sounds trivial, or that sounds like it doesn't, well, everything else is it. And then this is the novelty. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to define that a little bit better by the time we get through all 6 of these. But there was something of not knowing what to expect. Like the ignorance of, I have not read this writer. I have not seen this art style in its form ever, right? Things similar to it, but nothing like this. And I've never read a comic, sci-fi, that attempts to do what this one's doing in this medium. So I'm like, there's a lot of newness here. And I'm just kind of left being like, I don't know, buckle up. And I kind of really like that.
I think I would agree with you on that. I think that what I got from this book is just a different experience with a comic, right? And looking at it, coming at an idea and a concept in a different way. And I think that's the thing. We talk about the reason that we like comic books is because you get to tell very different stories with them. And maybe it's just because we've spent, this last year has been a lot of like, let's clump this theme together, this genre together, and this genre together, and this genre together. That it's kind of nice to break out of a genre. It's nice to kind of break out of a format. I'll tell you, like reading it in the oversized kind of hardcover version also felt different than reading other really books, right? So
I would have really liked to have read it like that. That looks really fun. Yeah,
that felt different. It was interesting. Reading it in bed, it's a little heavy and a little oversized.
Sure.
But
you feel like a little kid, like with a big old newspaper.
Big old newspaper book again. But I think what I'm getting out of this so far, and we're only 2 books in, is just new experiences with comics. And I think knowing that there are continually fresh things being done with a medium that has been around for a very long time is great, right? To me, I like knowing that it's not all superheroes. I like knowing that it's not all, that image formula of here's a thing, throw a ghost in it, or here's a thing, throw a vampire in it, right? Like you can do other things with comics, and it doesn't have to be a mishmash of genres. It doesn't have to be a mismatch of tastes. It could be.
What if that Little Women novel we were talking about earlier was with vampires, little vampire women?
You know what? You just pitched a colonial. What is it? Victorian era, not Victorian. What was it? Elizabethan? I don't know what era that.
No, Joe, don't go ice skating in the daytime. Wait till night. Little did Joe know it would be her last time skating. Vampires can freeze.
They can. They can. All right, Travis. That wraps our conversation. Organisms from an Ancient Cosmos, written and illustrated by S. Craig Zahler, out on Dark Horse Comics. A interesting, different way to experience comic. I really did kind of have fun with the art and the story. Coming up next, Travis Ratz, is talking with or talking to my father's ghost. What is it called? Talking to my father's ghost, an almost true story by Alex Crocus. It is another indie graphic novel for Graphic Novel Summer. I have followed Alex on Instagram for a while. He's an interesting cartoonist. He does a lot of like 4-panel comics that tell kind of like personal jokes about himself. This is kind of a almost true story of him dealing with the death of his father and what that looks like. I
wonder what's true, the ghost part or the father dying part. You guys got to read and find out.
Yeah, we'll also have to figure that out. So that'll be next up for Graphic Novel Summer. Thank you for tuning in. You can find us on the internets at Comic Exposure. At Instagram is where we post what's coming up, the books we're reading. You can follow along. You can listen to us on your favorite podcast app, or if you are a YouTube person, you want to see our mugs going through this, you can watch us on YouTube at Comic Exposure as well. So all those places.
I'm going to need to get some like red light therapy going, Josh, if we're going to continue this YouTube stuff.
You know, we film in the morning, so I always have a hat on. No one's ever going to see my luxurious hair. But thank you for tuning in. Please write a review, rate, whatever, favorite, follow us, download the issues. It helps people find the show. We have a merch store. If you want to get yourself a Comic Exposure t-shirt, you can. We should maybe update and do a new Comic
Organisms from Comic Exposure. There we go. Throw it on there.
So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next trade.